Good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday. Welcome to Northeast Ohio summer. Just a quick story. So we've been out of town for a week. We were visiting one of our grandkids out west, out in Texas. We landed yesterday afternoon, and we pulled up the weather, and it's like 37 degrees with the windshield. What that would come back to. And then one of our grandkids has a baseball game at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so we're sitting out there. So I turned to Katie and I'm like, I thought we were over this stage of life. Oh my gosh. First of all, welcome. We are the B team. Joe and Karen are on vacation with their family, enjoying themselves for the week. So you get us. We're going to talk a little bit about an organization that we're associated with. So first of all, my name is Gio Patesta, my wife Katie. We've been attending the church. We were involved in the church back in the late 90s when we were meeting at CCC, for those of you that have been around for a while. And then we left around 2005, and we were away from the area until about 2012, or 2017. And then we came back, and that's around the time period where the grandkids were starting to show up in the picture for us. And Katie and I, we were out in California, and we were starting to really think about, okay, so we're kind of approaching this next stage of life, and what type of impact do we want to have in our family. Both of us were blessed to grow up with our grandparents around us, and had an influence in our lives. Katie was your grandmother primarily, right? On the maternal side. And for me, my story is my parents are from Peru, South America. And when I was about 7 or 8 years old, my parents made the decision to move back to Peru so we could grow up with our family, with our grandparents and uncles and aunts and what have you. So tremendous impact in my life. So as we started moving into this stage of life with grandkids, we really started to take a step back and say, okay, so what type of impact do we want to have and influence? And that's when we kind of started making the decision that, hey, we probably need to be closer to the grandkids. So around 2017, I was commuting from one coast to the other, and we made kind of the decision to, let's go back to Hudson. This is family for us. One of our kids are here with 3 of our grandkids. So that's us. This is a motivator, by the way, so whenever Joe and Karen can't cover, and we want to kind of cover for them, you can show off your grandkids. So these are our 6 grandkids, and we range from ages 15 to 2 months. 3 of them are here in Ohio, so that's Cameron, the 15-year-old, holding the 1-month-old at that point in time. And then our twins, Chase and Anderson, they're 9 years old, so they're here. Then to the right of Addison is Jack, and Jack lives in Austin with his parents. He's a 1.5 years old. And then Oliver, who's in the middle, he's 2 years old. They're in Nashville. And then the baby that was just born, that's his brother, he's 2 months old. So those are our 6 grandkids, and just a great stage of life to be able to just be part of their lives and be able to impact them. When we were out in California, our adult fellowship group got involved with an organization. So our pastor back then, one of the pastors on staff, John Cologne, was associated with somebody that just founded this group called Legacy Coalition. And Legacy Coalition was founded by Larry Fowler. Some of you may recognize the name because Larry was in charge of Awana when some of our kids were going through Awana here at CCC. So he ran that organization for probably a couple of decades. And as Larry was entering that stage of life of grandparenting, he started to kind of talk to a lot of his peers and discovered that there weren't a lot of resources out there. There wasn't just a lot of material out there to support this effort in grandparenting. So these guys, along with John Cologne, who's on staff at Legacy Coalition, got together and started Legacy Coalition. And their kind of mission in life is to create all these resources to be able to equip grandparents to be an influence in the lives of their grandkids. And one of the things that caught my attention as we started to kind of listen to these guys and where they're going is this idea of having your grandkids be in heaven with you. And that really resonated for us. It's okay, so how do we become intentional Christian grandparents to be able to support the parents that are raising these kids, especially in this type of environment, and be able to just play a role and be equipped to be able to do so. So that's Legacy Coalition. Katie and I have been associated with them for a number of years. The organization's been around for about 10 years. They host an annual summit, and that's primarily the content that we want to share with you this morning, is some of the insights that we were able to gather as we were out there. This year was down in Birmingham, Alabama, probably about 600 to 700 people that attended from across the country. And then they also simulcast their material, and we'll talk about some of the tools that are available to use so that way you can kind of tap into some of the content. Real good content, great speakers. And as we were sitting there, and I think it's about a 2-day conference. They've been doing it for about 5 or 6 years.
What?
The summit.
Next year will be the 10th year.
The 10th year? Okay, good. What we want to do is just share some of the insights as it relates to what we were able to pick up at the summit. Got anything that you want to say? Okay. So, a couple of things that stood out for me. There were really 3 things that stood out for me when we were kind of sitting there. One is this whole idea of a systemic shift and the influence that our kids, our grandkids are exposed to. So just a quick exercise here for us is, what would you say were the most significant influencers in a young person's life outside of family when you were young? So just kind of think through that a little bit. Maybe you want to discuss it at your tables. I know I'm taking you back a few years, but what were some of those influence points when you were young back then, outside of church? Okay, so come on, discuss it a little bit, just for a second. Okay, we're going to make this quick, make sure we stay on time. So here, I'm sure you discussed some of these among your tables. Friends was probably an influence for us, right? Back in those days. TV and movies. I was reflecting this morning. I was going back to some of the movies or TV shows that Leave It to Beaver, right? Family Knows Best. Now I'm dating myself. Lassie, right? Rin, right? Yeah. Yeah. Probably music, right? Church. Some of us that were able to attend church, as well as the news. I was reflecting on the news back. Who remembers the landing on the moon or JFK's assassination, right? So we were influenced. So now fast forward to the generation that we're dealing with right now. So what are some of the things that they're faced with? So for friends, it's really being replaced by social media, right? So this whole connection to Facebook, Instagram, what have you, they're exposed to that. TVs and movies, online videos. YouTube is the most watched online, and the content there runs the gamut, if you will. But that's a point of influence for them. Online influencers. That's pretty popular out there, and those are influence points to this generation. Church, you have this whole secularism happening out there, the whole influence of the culture. And as well as news, you got this idea of just the echo chambers that unfortunately are existing out there, where really, people get involved online and they become part of a group, and that's where the influence is starting to come, and they're just being attacked through that. So that was one thing that stood out. The second item for us in Matthew 5:13 talks about you're the salt of the earth. And the challenge to us is this world needs more salty grandparents, right?
Good salty, not
Good,
bad
good salty,
salty.
by the way, yeah. Later on in Matthew, it talks about being the light of the world, shining the light out into the world. And this world really needs more shining grandparents. So you're starting to see the role that we have to play as grandparents in the lives of the next generation, and just being purposeful and intentional Christian grandparents. The other item that kind of stood out is this whole idea of sense of urgency. And they used an illustration to make this point, and the illustration was coming from the medical profession. They talk about in the golden hour, the hour immediately following a traumatic injury in which medical treatment optimizes the change to survival. That's critical first hour. And then the next, they call it the silver day, the secondary period of 24 hours when their survival is uncertain. So you apply it to the lives of our grandkids. The golden hour for our grandkids is between the ages of 5 to 12. Worldview is mostly being formed by the time they get to 12 years. Think about that. When you were 12 years old, would you have your worldview already kind of developed by then? So, but that's happening. And then the silver day, ages 13 to 20. Those high school years, those college years, influential years. So that's where the sense of urgency comes with this, is we really just need to be very intentional supporting the parents in the raising of those kids.
I was watching something on deconstructing faith, and it talked about when a child deconstructs, so let's say 13 to 20, they walk away from the faith. The number one person to bring them back is dad. The number two person to bring them back is a grandparent. And the number three person is mom. And you think, why? Mom's expected. So if we are going to build those relationships, we may be the people that have the opportunity to talk through when they're in 13 to 20 and questioning their faith.
So along those lines of sense of urgency, this just gives you kind of an idea of what we're up against. One of the statistics they talked about is, okay, so what's the landscape look like across the U.S.? And the statistic they threw out there was that there's about 30 million grandparents, Christian grandparents, across the U.S. There's about 70 million, by the way, just grandparents across the country. And specifically with Legacy Coalition, each dot represents 100,000 grandparents. Okay, so the yellow dot is the number of Christian grandparents that are out there, the intentional Christian grandparents. The black dots represent the number of grandparents, Christian grandparents, that Legacy Coalition has been able to reach, which is about 300,000 at this point in time. So the organization's been around for 10 years. That's what so there's a lot of work to be done. And just replicating this kind of ministry across a number of churches. And we're very proud of what CCC and the commitment that we received from Jim College, which kind of kicked this off, and then Joe, which is picking up the ball and continuing. And for us to look around. So what does this mean for us at CCC, just based on our database? So based on our database, we have about 1,850 plus adults attending CCC that are called CCC their home church, if you will. If you apply kind of the 70% rule to just those being grandparents, that equates to about 1,200 grandparents that we have within this community called CCC. Based on our database, we have about 316 people in our emails. The point being is there's a lot more folks within our CCC community that we ought to be encouraging in getting engaged The other piece is we're in a stage of life now that, you know, we have something in common, grandchildren. It's just a great opportunity for us to just be able to brag about our grandchildren, to be able to pray about our grandchildren, to be able to gather best practices about grandchildren, because this is a community that we've been able to build here at CCC, and why not take full advantage of that? Okay? So with that, okay, you're on.
So when Jim is retiring, Kathy and I are talking to Joe about him taking this over. I said, listen, my goal, when Joe went from being a Sunday school adult fellowship teacher here to preaching, his Sunday school class was the same size as the service. So I said, hey, my goal is that this CCC Grands will be the same size as First Hour someday. Just so you know, First Hour is 430 people presently. So we need to invite our friends. We have lots of friends we know here who aren't here, who could be a part of this. So invite them to our next one in the fall. So the theme of the conference this year was for this purpose, thinking through our purpose and how do we live it out. And what I want to do is spend a few minutes, I'm going to give you a lot of quotes from the speakers we had, just so you can kind of get a sense of the things we learned at the conference, and some of them might resonate with you. So the first speaker was Larry Fowler. What Gino shared was from something called the Founders Dinner. That was information he shared at a dinner before the conference. And this was his speaking at the conference, and he was talking about the purpose. And he talked about our purpose on earth. The Westminster Shorter Catechism says our purpose on earth is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. And 1 Corinthians will say, you were bought with a price, glorify God in your body. So he begins to talk about our purpose is to glorify God in the things we do, the things we say. So if our purpose, the umbrella of our life is to glorify God in our purposes, there are two kinds of purposes we have in our lives. We have a doing purpose and we have a being purpose. For our doing purpose, they're all temporary. Many of you are retired from a job. That was your doing purpose. Now that you're done, someone else is doing it. Those are things that if you stop, someone else could step into. Your being purpose is who we are, and that never stops. And for us, our being purpose that we're here to talk about is being grandparents. I am the only one who can be Chase, Addison, all the rest of their maternal grandmother. I am the one, that is what I am called to do. It is my being purpose, and that will not change, and it's not temporary. So, what Larry would say in this is that our purpose must impact four things. That being purpose of being a grandparent must impact our bucket lists. The things that we want to do in life before it's over. Our being purpose should impact our bucket lists. It needs to impact how we spend our time. It does for Gino and I. We just flew back from Texas to be with the 20-month-old. It should impact how we spend our time. It should impact how we spend our money. And the last one is, it should impact where we live. It should impact where we live. I met a couple who's new to our church. They moved here in November. And they moved here because all three of their kids live here and all their grandchildren live here. So they have done where they live. They want to be an impact on those grandchildren. So the next speaker was Dr. Jeff Myers, and his was Point Them to Truth. And it was talking through the kind of conversations we can have and how important they are. And he was speaking specifically for those who are Gen Z. And Gen Z is born between 1997 and 2012. And some of the stats for Gen Z, 50% deal with anxiety and depression. 75% have no sense of purpose. And only 3 in 10 believe in absolute truth. So if you have someone who's a Gen Z as a grandchild or a child, you're going to have perhaps different conversations than you would with a 5-year-old. And one of the things he said a lot of the times was, when they're sharing something that you're like, I don't believe that. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. Getting them to share without immediately going into, but that's not right. Just allowing them, for you to be a safe space for them to talk. will allow you then perhaps to speak into them with truth. Anne Graham Watts was another speaker. She was there with her daughter Rachel Ruth Wright and her granddaughter Reagan Wright. And this was Think 4 Generations was the topic of their talk. And the one thing from that one that stayed with me, it said there is power in our example. You can't teach your kids or grandkids to eat spinach if you gag when you eat it. So I remember years ago, I can't remember who was teaching Bible study here, but they talked about would your kids remember you with the Bible open? So however it is you are with your grandkids, have the Bible out if that's what you've been reading. They wouldn't have seen that from me because I did it after they were in bed and then I put it away. So if we can have those kind of things out and be talking about that. This impacted me. We came back from the summit and Gino went to pick up our oldest grandson Cameron. And I was working on a talk and I was listening to a song. And I normally would close it and start to talk with Cameron, but I left it on. And he said, Yaya, who is that? And so we talked about it, and he said, oh, well, what about this song? And so that allowed us to have a conversation because I had that open. So make sure that you are showing them, giving them an example of this is great, and this is something that is important for my life. Trudy Cathy White was fabulous. Trudy Cathy White is the daughter of the Chick-fil-A founder, Truett Cathy. And so she spoke. She was phenomenal. But I'm going to give you one thing she encouraged to do as a family that she did with her kids. Her quote, the quote I liked was, the legacy we leave is the life we're living now. The legacy we leave is the life we're living now. She talked about having cards, blank cards, like note cards, index cards, we would call them. I don't know what kids today call them. And you, at a family thing, have everyone write down their values. What are your values as a family? What are your values? And then you begin to refine them. She encouraged them to refine them until they came up with their 5 highest values. And she said, what really matters to you, write that on the cards. What values govern how you live? And what values do you want others to see in you? And then at the end, she said, keep refining them. They were together for like a weekend, and the kids kept refining them, and then at the end, they shared their 5 values. They may not be what you want them to be, but at least it lets them see, here's what we have valued. Sports, what we value is. And she gave her 5 values, and they were values I think all of us would put in there as high values for us. So this is an activity I think Gino and I will try and do with our kids. Then Rob Reno spoke, and he spoke on building family unity. Rob Reno was the children's pastor when we were out in Revival Church years ago, and he's gone on to run a business called, I believe it's Visionary Parenting, is the name of his. And he talked about building family unity. He said, it's possible there are blessings in my life because of the faithfulness of my ancestors. I love genealogy research, and on my mom's side, it's generation after generation after generation of people who love Jesus. And on my dad's side, it's not that. And so I do have that generational influence. We want to be that for our kids. So when they hear this, they will think, yeah, it is because of Yaya and Papa, and because of their mom and dad. He talked about writing a love letter to my kids and grandkids with 2 themes: why I love Jesus and why I love them. So write a love letter to all your kids, all your grandkids, and talk about why you love Jesus and why you love them. This one was probably the most impactful. I have a meeting every week with the core team, the leadership team of Legacy Coalition. And after that talk, there was way more sharing about their own prodigals. There's probably 30 or 40 of us on this call. We have different jobs within Legacy Coalition, and we meet every week. And so they are going to, based on the feedback and everything from this talk on Love Your Prodigal, they're going to start a night where they gather parents, grandparents of prodigals to pray. And they'll probably, the goal is to gather 1,000 of parents of prodigals to pray. So Dr. James Banks was that one. And one of the things he said is your prodigal cannot outrun your prayers. So we need to be praying for prodigals. God knows what it's like. He has a world full of prodigals. Our adversary targets the families of God's servants to distract, discourage, and wear us down. There's a difference between waiting for God and waiting with God. When we wait for God, our eyes are on what we're asking for. But when we wait with God, our eyes are on Him most of all. One of his books, Dr. Banks has had 2 prodigals, and one of them was a drug addict. That one has since returned to him. I can't remember had he returned to faith. But he has written a couple books on this, and so Prayers for Prodigals is one of them. Legacy Coalition also has resources on the website. You have a brochure on your table with tells you all about the Legacy Coalition resources. So if you go on the page, click search, you click prodigals, there's multiple things. There's a Grand Monday Night episode, there's blog posts, there's several things that come up to resource you if you have someone who's a prodigal. I want to encourage you when you're doing your prayer requests here, share that. You know, you may think, oh, everyone else, their kids are all polished and buttoned up. No, let us pray for you. Let us do that. So share your prayer requests. Share the things that are on your heart because we want to be a part of resourcing you in that. And then Dr. Crawford Loritz. Crawford Loritz speaks every summit, and he's always fabulous. And this one was just grandparenting wisdom. And one of them was be a portrait of the destination. If we're going to leave footprints, we need to wear work boots. The culture does not make it easy for us to have an impact on our grandkids in the way we'd like it to. We do need to get on our work boots if we're going to be able to do this. Know, be resourced, have the tools necessary to do it. That's what Joe's been doing all this way, or he'll continue to do into the fall as we finish up Secular Creed, is resourcing us for those conversations. That's what we want CCC Grands to be about. That's what Legacy Coalition is about. Prayer is my life's expression of dependence on God. Your children and grandchildren should come in contact with hope when they come in contact with you. Are you someone who is living a life when they see where they go, I want to be like that. I want to be like that. Think through who we are when we're with our grandchildren. Well, who we are when we're not with our grandchildren. Because that's going to impact who we are when we're with our grandchildren. Like I said, the brochure you have has several things in it. Grand Monday Nights is something that you sign up and you get an email every week of the link to watch Grand Monday Nights. That's a live presentation with different speakers and different testimonies. I actually was one of the testimonies, and I spoke and I did something about CCC Grands and what we're doing here. But that is something that you can do. You don't have to do it on Monday nights. You can watch all the old videos. Whatever topics interest you, search it, and it should come up. There are about 15,000 grandparents who have signed up for Grand Monday Nights, and so that is something that has been very useful for many people. It goes every Monday night. Barbara Lorenz leads it, and she does a fabulous job with speakers. Join us at the next summit. That's March 19th to 21st at Tuxman Gulch Church in Frisco, Texas, Stonebriar Church. The theme of the next conference is heaven, and thinking about wanting our grandchildren in heaven with us. I've been having a conversation with my kids to kind of help them think through what's at stake. Because through a lot of different things. So I was with the mother and father of our 20-month-old grandson, and I said, what's at stake is you and Justin, I was talking to his wife, know Jesus. You'll be there. If you don't transfer your faith, Jack may not be. That impacted her so much. When we were talking about the summit, I realized that these parents need to understand what's at stake because they may be there and their kids may not. So that's been a good conversation. I know there will be great speakers at the summit. Do you guys have any questions before we let you discuss? Something you want to say?
The only other thing is a lot of these resources are free right away.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Everything's free.
I mean, their legacy is a nonprofit, they're not out trying to make money or any of that, it's just really their heart is to equip grandparents. So I encourage you to go out there and kind of browse around. The other thing is, I don't know about you, but for us, one of our favorite times with our grandkids is the summer, because I don't know about you, but these kids are busier than our kids when we were raising them. And summer allows us and gives us the margin to be a little more intentional and really interact with them. So the timing of this conversation is pretty good because we're heading into the summer. Hopefully we give you some things to just kind of consider to be even more intentional during the summer to engage with them. We recognize that not everybody is in town. For us, we got a couple of different states, but we're from the area, we try to travel to them, or they come to us, or we meet somewhere, and just that time is just so valuable, and just let's not take it for granted. Let's just be very intentional in being able to pass on that to you. So.
Questions? Yes.
The Grandparent Summit, it says they're going to live location where you can go watch it. Are there places around here to watch that?
The question is does the Grandparenting Summit have satellite sites where you can watch it here? The satellites for the one next year will be in September of 26, and they are hoping there will be. The only one, there was one year before last in Canton, and there was one up towards the lake, whatever would be on the right of Cleveland. It was way up far from us. There was one.
What they've done in the past, and I haven't been on to see if they did it with this recent summit, is that they do take all the sessions, but because the speakers, they own their content, they do charge a little bit to be able to pull down that particular video. It's a window of time that they'll put it out there on the website. So.
Yeah, there is also, if there isn't a summit host site, we call them, you can register and you just watch the videos. You get them for 2 months to watch for yourselves. I forgot about that. Other questions? Okay, you have a prayer sheet on your tables, and that is something that Legacy Coalition created, so we thought that would be fun to give you this month to pray for your grandchildren. And then I have some discussion questions here, but feel free to ignore them. If you have a great way of doing things at your table, since Joe doesn't normally give them, feel free to ignore them. We do not meet in July or August. We will be back in September to continue on with secular Creed and Joe, but it will be the second Sunday in both September and October because of Joe's preaching schedule. So we told him when he was willing to take this, we do not mind. We will work around your schedule. So plan to come in those months and plan to bring others with you.